This is Take Flights with Mark Whittle.
Lads, welcome to the Take Flight podcast.
Welcome back to the Take Flight podcast.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Do you always find at the start of a podcast, it's always like, how do you start the intro? Do you find people come out with weird one-liners, like their energy will be one thing before and then just something comes out of them where they maybe get nervous and just say something completely random?
Yeah.
The tone of voice increases.
As you
Hey, what's
inject-
that? Hey, how we doing? You're like, that's not who you are.
I literally had that the other week. That's funny. Look at where we are. Setting. So we're sat in, for people who are listening, we're sat in Tano's garden.
Yeah, which is the weather's come out today. It's been raining all week. So no, nice to get the cushions out again on the. I brought this during the summer actually. I was like, oh, it's gonna be an amazing summer. I'll spend a bit of money on some garden furniture. Had like a week of sunshine and I've not been able to use it.
Well, it's worth it for now, mate.
Nice,
we're
just
getting the benefit.
In
now.
September. Who would have thought we'd
Yeah.
be sat out here right now with weather this nice in September?
Yeah, it's just. I think the summer has gone later. I think it seems like the seasons have shifted a bit. You know, whether that's global warming or what really. But yeah, I do feel like the summers are a bit later now.
For me, it's just the place of peace. Like I got here late last night, and the shift in my mentality and as a person, I'm just so much happier. Even just the people, like it sounds really silly, but like early this morning when I was driving over here to meet with you guys, you know, I'm pulling out of the driveway in the village that my family lives in, and there's one car coming. And goes out his way to stop to let me out. And I know that sounds really weird, but considering that's my first interaction with a person and it's that positive, it immediately puts my mood like in the right way. Whereas in London, I find I'm triggered within like 10, 20 seconds of leaving my front door because we just don't have that sense of community or support. And that's why I love coming back here. So like already I'm in my element.
I think that's probably a numbers game as well. That there's just a high number of people in London. Like that's not always the same in Norfolk. Like you do generally get. I drive to work sometimes, and you see people, and you might pull out, and you think it's 6:30 a.m. in the morning, and you're so angry. Like how you've been up about an hour. How can you be so angry at my driving at 6:30 in the morning? You've only just woke up.
But we were speaking about this over some food, weren't we? About when we've already decided what something is, we'll find it more and more. So your association of this place is that it's peaceful, it's your happy place. So you'll find those people who will let you out in the same. You obviously hate it here, Tanner.
No, do you know? I don't hate it. I actually love it. It is nice. We're so lucky here because it is just quiet, peaceful. You know, we don't get much crime. You know, everybody. You get good and bad. Anything. You know, it's a small town, so everybody. You can't have a secret either. You know, it's float around. But
that's the beauty of London is the you know, you have got that anonymity. No one knows your story. No one cares. But then you also don't have that human connection as much. So
I think nature as well. Like for me, coming back here, it's being surrounded by the greenery. I've grown up my entire life by the sea and by nature, and you know, I'm ultimately living now in like a concrete jungle, and it's taken me so many years. I think when you're younger, you maybe disconnect from that, and you're so, I guess, active from all the social aspects or side of things. And I think as I've got older now I'm kind of in my 30s, especially now I've got a daughter. I really reflect and I think really value more than ever how much this place means to me and the impact that it actually has. Like weirdly, like my love for water, like just diving into the open ocean for me, it doesn't matter what temperature it is, there's just something about it where it just completely revitalizes me. It literally is like a charger. And I think I've realized, especially as maybe career or lifestyle maybe has started to like increase or get busier, by not having that charger around me, it certainly starts to impact. And so, you know, it's one of those things where I'm at a point in my life now where I probably, instead of just complaining about it, I just go and do it. So if that's what I need to do, some might find it quite excessive having to drive 3 and a bit hours back home or to go to a local beach. But if swimming once a week will be that positive change, then just go do it, you know? So any opportunity I have to come back here, I just take it.
I think there's something magical about water. I don't know what that is about me as well. Like not jumping in the sea so much, but there's a little spot in town where the Ouse comes through, and ever since I could drive, whenever anything is either going wrong in my life or even well, like I sit there. Like some days I've sat there for like 8-9 hours and just you can't hear anything other than birds and just water. and even when I was like paralysed, being in the water for physio, like hydrotherapy, like it's just something magical about it. Yeah.
Well, we're 80% water, aren't
Yeah,
we? So there's almost like a returning to source feeling. Also, when communities in generations before us would settle, it would always be around water. So it's been such a constant
need
for
it for
us.
life.
Yeah.
Without it, it's just even my garden. It was really weird. I just had a gardener start, and I thought, come on, it just looked so run down, this garden. I thought, oh, that's because I don't look after it. And he turned up and he was like, that's actually because we had a bit of a drought this year. And then we had like 3-4 days of rain, and it was like the whole thing just like this little red plant over there was honestly looked like that had been dead for about 6 years. 4 days of water is like
alive,
wow. And I was
like life.
It's just magic. Yeah, it's just amazing how it works.
So lads, I'm so excited to be up here with you. It's been a long time coming, to be honest. Tano, welcome back, as you said rightly.
Yep.
You were on the podcast, I think it must have been nearly 3 years ago, actually.
Yeah, I hadn't long been out of hospital, so that would have been 2018 maybe.
And then you were nice enough to come and sit on the panel for the event, which again was 2 years ago, and Josh came and you sat on the panel as well. So
Josh owned the panel, actually. I don't think any of us got to
Owned
talk. Took up all the time. We'll keep it short, one word answer. Just 35 minutes.
Just nightmares, and the fact that you pre-warned everybody there, and I still just chatted shit for like 20 minutes, and that was just to say my name.
Yeah.
No, it was one of the most moving parts of the evening for me, was you sharing your story, mate, and which is why this has been such a long time coming, I think, getting it on the podcast as well. But I think the best thing that came out of those events or conversations were that we've all struck up a friendship since then, which has been really nice. And, even during the pandemic, phone calls and staying in touch, which has been really important for me as well.
From day one, actually, from the moment I met you, like I instantly connected with you. Yeah, and it's weird. I actually was going to do a post on Instagram about the new PT I've just met, like how I don't know if it's me or most people do it, but I buy people over products or companies or anything. Like if somebody comes round from a big company, I couldn't care what credentials they got, but if I can connect with that person, like my trust goes into them. And that was the same when I met you. Like we just had that instant connection. Like I knew you'd be a friend, and that was after one day's podcast. So.
Do you know what I think it is? I think it's because so few people, and I don't mean this as a negative, because I think everybody in life at some point will decide to go on that journey for themselves. But I think the reality is so few do. And so when you actually are able to connect with somebody that equally is as open or is as vulnerable, say, as you are, there's something really strong about that connection where you maybe empathize or you understand, you relate to that individual more so typically than you maybe do to the vast majority of people. And I think because maybe there are so few relationships out there, you really do value and nurture them. And that's maybe why we connect more. And I think it's just such a powerful thing when you yourself understand that there is work to be done and you want to do it. But also when you can hear somebody else's journey and the positive change that individual is making to themselves and the impact that that's having on their environment, it's just as good a feeling. And I think you do have to be at a point in your life to feel that way. And I think, sometimes you can kind of go into conversations and maybe come out slightly frustrated. And it's not because the person necessarily doesn't have the ability. It's just maybe they're not at a point in their life where they want to hear or understand it.
Yeah, you've got to meet people where they are on their journey. You're absolutely right, mate. It's the vulnerability and the openness, but also the direction and the philosophies. Like that's what I get from us, is that immediately we start talking about what we've been doing or what we're passionate about, and I can feel the energy off of both of you, and we feel like very connected and aligned on our way of thinking and our mindset and all that, so it makes it very natural and easy to have those conversations.
It's certainly I had a strong connection with, like, it's tough times as well. Like if you've been through something similar, like when I was in hospital, like I've had best friends, like Josh, a good friend of mine. You build up that relationship. You are good friends over experiences. But 2 or 3 people I was in hospital with who've been paralysed as well, like you have an instant connection. Like they become instant best friends because you're going through something very similar, which is traumatic. And you build them connections over times like that as well. So it is amazing how you meet different people for different reasons. Yeah.
And I think it's also a balance though. I think when you are connecting with someone, I think there's a way in which you can achieve it. And I think there's friends in our lives that equally as passionate about developing their own journey. And again, this isn't to discredit them, but sometimes it's quite overpowering. And that's not because they're wrong in the way that they're doing things. That's the way that they feel most comfortable expressing themselves. But again, the reality is for the vast majority that are just starting out in their journey, or maybe do their journey slightly differently, that can come across maybe sometimes a little bit intense. And actually, I think maybe where we've connected really well is the synergy's really there, where we're on a level in the way that we do sort of express ourselves. But again, I think that takes, and I'm not saying this to praise myself or us, but I think, again, that takes maybe a level of experience or maturity to understand that, rather than maybe discredit or judge a person for the way that they do it themselves.
But that is such a good point, mate, because there is an intensity to the personal development journey that we've all been on. And again, like you were saying before, meet them where they are, because some people are just in that depth, might have a little bit more darkness than where we are. We've kind of come out the other side, not to say that we might go back in it at another stage, but yes. And it's also having some compassion for those, being like, yeah, do you know what? They're in a bit of a darker place. It's very heavy on them right now. And, you know, whatever you have to do for those people, we might not connect as well as we have, but we can support that in
And sometimes you meet people and you kind of like give them advice they might not be ready for at the time, but actually it does stick there. And then like later down the line, 2 years, that kind of clicks. You know, so you never know how you're going to influence.
Well, I was even
people,
talking before about Josh when you said that to me on the phone. We won't go too much into the detail of what that was, but at the time I was like, no, not like, you know, can't go there really at the minute. But then like it took a few weeks, and it was something I needed to hear at the time. And that's again what friendships are for as well, right? Like a little bit of that challenge as well.
And don't underestimate, when you're talking to somebody about something, the impact that it will have on them. It might not be instant. Exactly what you've just said there. Just planting the seed is enough. And if it takes them a month or 10 months or 2 years or 10 years, you know, eventually I think it will have that impact and hopefully will materialize into something, you know. But you got to remember, like, what's your environment? Who do you have around you? Or what event in your life has been the catalyst for you to think in a certain way or want to change in a certain way? They may not have that. You know, if they are the only person, and I find this so often with what I do and when people come to me where, you know, something's inspired them and they want to go and do something for themselves, but sometimes their closest environment or, you know, role model, whether it be their mother, father, friends or family, are actually the ones that are hindering them rather than promoting them as a person. And so I think that's where you have to be empathetic to that person's situation, where the process might take slightly longer than typically you may handle it, you know. And I think that's something that society lacks right now, is that patience. You know, we get really frustrated when somebody doesn't immediately respond to what it is that we're telling them. And actually, I think, you know, if we could just relax maybe in our approach to doing things, you know, I think certainly the world would be a better place. That's easier said than done. There's a lot of people in this world.
Mate, I love it. I'm buzzing already from this, because so I hadn't planned on talking about this, but as it happens, I've got a talk on Saturday. I'm delivering new material that I've never said before in my life. And I'm delivering a talk which is ultimately a formula I've created that I think that everyone can apply, that makes or can help them to basically be happier and potentially discover what their purpose is and pursue that sort of thing. And ultimately, because there is no formula, no bespoke formula that says do X, achieve Y, it's 3 questions, because everyone can answer a question in their own way and get their own answer from that. But I was arguing myself about this. It's like, how much do you like scream at someone, or how much do you like rant on about what you believe? And we were talking about the power of storytelling earlier, and there's an element in the talk, or a part in the talk, where I'll tell a story. One of the questions is, who am I? That's where the formula starts. Who am I? How often do we ask ourselves, who am I? And the story that I tell is from Zoolander, you know, the film Zoolander.
Oh, yeah, I've not seen it actually.
Have you not?
No,
It's so good.
Mate, it's so
good.
So there's a scene in there, right, where Derek Zoolander, who's male model of the year 3 years in a row. It's a comedy, bear in mind, like it's not a serious film.
It's based on Josh.
Actually, not far off. You got a good blue steel. But
You'll watch this tonight now, I bet.
yeah, please.
I don't watch movies, to be honest.
Oh, you want to watch, because it's comedy brilliance.
It is
basically.
great. It's Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, Will Ferrell. But there's a scene in there, right, when Ben Stiller, who's Derek Zoolander, he's the 3-time male model of the year, and they're about to announce who's the male model of the year, so he could be the 4th.
Yeah.
4 years in a row. And he so identifies with himself as the male model of the year that it's already tied up, right? He's already won. So as the announcer goes to say who the male model of the year is, he's already out of his seat walking down to the stage, and finally they say the male model of the year is Hansel, and he still hasn't even heard it. He's on the stage and he doesn't realise until Hansel gets up and he's on the stage that he's actually not won.
Right.
And that's when his world falls apart, because he identifies as male model of the year, storms out the auditorium, stands on the street in New York Street, looks down at the floor, there's a puddle, and he looks into the reflection in the puddle and he says, "Who am I?" And the reflection looks back at him and goes, "I don't know." But in that story, that's all you actually need to know, right?
Yeah.
You can glean from that whatever you want. And because I'd initially written it, it's like, tell the story and then go, right, so because he identifies with this, and then I mapped it all out, but you don't need to. People can just get from that story or your advice or whatever they need in that moment. Yeah,
I mean, it's a deep question, but, you know, do you ever fully find out who you actually are? You know, I'm 32 now, and I would say I'm going through quite a tough period in my mind where I'm maybe being so hard on myself to the point where I don't think I know who I am. I thought I did. And I think, you know, I articulate myself very well. And often when I speak, you know, I'm very humbled by how well people seem to engage with what I say. But then I walk away from it, and when I'm on my own, I'm kind of sat there and I'm like, "You're full of shit, mate," because you struggle daily mentally with who you are and, you know, what your purpose in life is and where you want to be and what ability you have in order to achieve it. And yet here you are sat on these panels talking to people, articulating yourself well, but do you even have a right really to do it? You know, and it's weird. I almost feel like I'm at a point now where I think I've shut so much off in my life, and it seems to all be coming to the surface now. And so things that I've managed to ignore for so long are coming to play. And I don't know if it's things that I've been going through over the last few years have triggered that. And it all seems to be coming in at once. And it is quite intense, and it is a process that I'm trying to get through. And I would say one of my major inspirations about sieving through it and sorting that shit out is my little girl. You know, because whatever I go through in my life, I think learning through what I've been through as a child, I never want it to impact her. But then there are times where I'm sort of sat next to her and I'm cuddling and kissing her, and to her, I'm daddy, I'm this big, strong, powerful character, I'm her protector. And there are times where it makes me feel really vulnerable being next to her, being like, I feel so weak in my mind right now, where I'm questioning myself and my ability. You know, am I the right role model for you? It's a really weird process that I'm going through, but one that I have to face, and multiple people will face through it. And I don't see it as a negative, because like many things that I've had to overcome in my life, I will overcome this. And I know that I will look back and I'll know that this was a really defining moment in my life, not just for myself, but as a father, as a role model, you know, and just as a person in general.
See, I think that's one of, like, I mean, that's a question I've never even thought of, like, who am I? And then listening to you talk and thinking about it, like, I think sometimes that can be the big problem, though. People question, who am I? Like, why think about it? Like, I've never thought about who I am, because in many ways I'm just me. Do you know what I mean? So I think if I actually did think about that too much, that might push me in a thought of, like, who am I? And then it pushes me down a road where I kind of don't want to go, you know? I don't know. So actually, by me not thinking about it and just accepting I am me, I navigate through life, kind of letting life just dictate me. That's weird. I've never thought of that.
No, but you're almost at the answer that you get to.
Yeah.
Because I think a process of, and Josh, thanks for saying that, by the way, because I can completely relate as a new dad as well, when you're in those circumstances and you feel like the protector, but there's thoughts going on where you have self-doubt and all that stuff as well. So it'd be really great to hear a little bit more about that. But almost asking who am I is, you don't need an answer.
No.
And that's when we have pressure on ourselves to deliver an answer, that's when it can turn into stress, anxiety, worry, depression. But
I've gone.
No, just going to say, like, the process of asking who am I is more of an observational thing.
Yeah.
It's like, so, okay, who am I? Well, it's building self-awareness.
Yeah.
Basically. And I think you've got so much self-awareness already.
Yeah.
That so this is in this talk, that's the start of it. Then you ask, okay, who do I want to be?
What do I need to do next? So it's actually because it is me. I'm sat here now listening, but I'm actually trying to, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking,
but you ask the right questions in your life, right? People say, like, the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions.
Yeah.
You ask it yourself, as do you, Josh, as do I, and we've established this before. But you're a long way down this journey, and this is almost a formula to help people who are like, early stages. And you don't need to get an answer. You don't need to say, well, I am this person, this person, this person. And sometimes society dictates what that is, and that's not a good thing.
No.
It's just opening up the conversation, allowing yourself to observe who you are. And if we look at patterns, it's what do I think leads to what do I feel?
Yeah.
How do I behave?
Yeah.
And it's just watching those things. People say, there's a quote that says, who I am is what I do when no one else is around. So like, how do you behave when you're by yourself? When no one's watching and there's no cameras and there's nobody else judging or anything like that.
Yeah.
How do you behave? How do you feel? What do you think?
See, and I suppose that's come to like, I've kind of had not a near-death experience, but like, I feel I've always lived a life true to myself. I kind of, when I spoke to people before about it, where I was laying on the floor, I thought if I'd have died that day when I had my accident, there's nothing I regret. There's nothing I wish I'd have done. Like, I'd actually lived a life, never been anything extravagant or anything, but I've done everything I kind of want to do. So, or want to done. So I kind of, I don't know, I do ask myself questions sometimes, like, have I done this right? Have I done that right? But yeah, I've never sat down and thought what defines me and who I am. Yeah. So that's a good opening to your talk, because it is thought-provoking. Yeah.
I've, a lot of people always ask me whenever I do my challenges, like, what's the inspiration behind it? Why do I do it? And I think now more than ever, and I really do show a lot of gratitude to my daughter for this, because I think it gets to the point in life where when you get older and you start to become, I would say, more aware of yourself, you get to the point where the facade has to go.
It changes a person.
You do. And I think I've managed to bullshit myself and therefore bullshit a lot of people. And I don't mean lie to them, but like, maybe portray something more or differently to what maybe is going on within. And, with these challenges, there is a really deep rooted meaning to it, which, I won't share, but I think there's multiple reasons. And, for me, that question of who am I? And I think because in life, I have never done anything extraordinary, nor have I ever really been necessarily valued. Like, I never really, and I mean, as in like, I've never excelled at school. I was always dropped. There were really defining moments in my life where, I remember a period of time during like athletics, sport was where I did excel, but then I'd find myself being dropped by the person that meant a lot to me, like a teacher. And I remember one really poignant moment was when Mrs. Thurlow, who was, I looked up to her so much. I'd won multiple awards for the school in athletics, 100 meters, 200 meters, long jump, and long jump was my thing, and I did it every year. And then out of nowhere, I remember this guy, Stephen Crook, did a big jump, and she went, "Oh, Stephen Crook's going to do long jump this year." And I remember being like, hang on a sec, why is he doing that because of one jump? This is my thing. He's a long distance runner. And in front of everyone, she made him and I do a jump off, and he beat me like by one jump, and so she gave it to him, and I've never forgot that day. And so I'm dragging this point out, but there's moments like that. And then in rugby, where rugby was my passion, and I remember being dropped, which really knocked my confidence and therefore was the catalyst of like bad performances. And rather than having the coach put his arm around me saying, this is where you need to excel to be back in this team, I'd watch the coach pass me with all the boys off for the away games, and it devastated me. And so I think the reason why maybe there's a part of the grandness of these challenges is to kind of like reassure myself that I am capable of doing exceptional things, even though society, in my mind, has said otherwise. Does that make sense?
Completely.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yes.
It's not ordinary. I try and think outside the box, and I try do things that nobody's done before. Therefore, there's no comparison and a chance of maybe someone taking it from me. Don't get me wrong. If I, for instance, ever set a world record or I was to break one, I wouldn't be disheartened if someone went on to break it. If anything, that would be the best thing in the world. But I think, I've been so disappointed. Maybe I'm digging deeper to try find that validation that I feel like I've maybe not had. I mean, I've never spoken like this before, to be honest, in a podcast. This is really delving deep into it. But, I feel like rather than sitting here today doing this podcast with you, where I've done this in the past, where you try and put yourself off as this really inspirational person, hopefully the listener will maybe hear a slightly more vulnerable side to things and see a different side to you that I typically maybe haven't shown before.
Yeah, mate, that's amazing. And I completely can see where you're making that link to, well, I played in a team sport with lots of other people playing it, and I was then ostracized, or it felt like that. So I will do challenges that no one's ever done before, and I will do them, and I will be better than anybody else, and then no one can compete with me about. So there's no, it's that certainty versus uncertainty, right? One of the 6 human needs is we need to feel certain. Well, you must feel pretty certain, even though you haven't done the challenge yet, that no one else is going to be able to do it because no one's done it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but also there's an element where, again, on a different side of it, you know, I love doing things that haven't been done before because, again, I guess it's just the impact that it has on the people around you. Again, it's that uncertainty of, like, you know, the first question, and that's why you do it. If you tell somebody you're going to do something, the first thing they say to you is that even possible? Bang. You've got to do it. And I think I maybe get a thrill off that, the fact that nobody's done it. And let's be honest, like, the magnitude of some of them is pretty ridiculous. And maybe that's, again, where I get my kicks. I think there's so many different dimensions to it. And then when you do, you know, maybe that's how I get my self-worth. I don't know. But I think there is definitely a side of it where I actually look at these challenges. And for me, what I'm trying to preach to a lot of people right now is that, you know, certainly over the last number of years have been probably the toughest of my life. And this man here has honestly been my backbone, and with his age and experience has managed to support me through those times. And actually, had I not been through many or so many maybe negative or tough times in an earlier life, would I even have been prepared or strong enough to get through that? And the answer is probably not, in all honesty. But then what I've tried to do, and actually some of the greatest challenges I've ever done in my life, is when I'm at my lowest mentally. And for me, it's a case of, when you've bottled up all these negatives, you know, a lot of people turn to drugs or alcohol or aggression or whatever it may be. And for me, it's exerting it into these challenges in a really constructive way. Now, I used to look at it really negatively, where I was like, do you know what, by going into such savage training and challenges, if I'm going to punish myself, then I'll punish myself doing it. And then it was just through speaking to a therapist where that was just like a really negative way of approaching things. Why would you want to wreck yourself? That's not helping you. You know, like we spoke about earlier, you're just going to go through life being that angry person. And so for me, it was trying to look at it from a more positive angle. But it has been my savior, where I've been able to go into these challenges. And like I said, it's channeling that negative energy into something positive. And so therefore something positive comes from it.
It's also a distraction, I suppose, isn't it? Like, if you've got something else going on in the background, which kind of is really hindering your mood and getting you low, but actually then challenging yourself to do something else takes your attention away from that. So, yeah, it's a coping
Healthy
mechanism.
distraction.
Yeah, that's exactly like, yeah. And like that, I mean, you know, obviously I know him really well. We talk loads. When you was going through a really tough time with sort of like India and the whole breakup, you definitely found a solace in that wheelchair, you know, going out and doing it. And I was like, cool, this is, you know, really about you just kind of finding yourself, you know, the challenge. So it's weird how you distract yourself in certain ways. Coping mechanisms, isn't they, really?
Yeah, but healthy ones, which
Yeah.
is what you were saying, Josh. Is that you're not doing it. Maybe there was a slight negativity at the beginning, but then you had the ability to see it and change it. Can we talk a little bit just to add context to what you guys are talking about? And I encourage everyone to go back and listen to Tano's episode, which was, I think it was 36 or 37,
Right.
which is your story really, which we're going to get the sort of end to that story in another episode sometime in the future. But
When I'm sprinting.
when you
At the Paris Olympics.
But I'd love to hear your guys' version of, I suppose I'd love to hear the friendship really, and what that friendship turned into with the accident, with the challenges, because let's face it, you're both absolute legends with what you've done and how you've inspired so many people with the challenges. And Josh, what you've done just in this last 12 months is outstanding. So
Thank you, mate.
just honestly, mate, unbelievable. So if you could just add like a little bit of context to you guys and the kind of coming together of your friendship and then the journey that you've been on since Tanner, your accident.
I mean, our friendship definitely enhanced when I had my accident, didn't it? I mean, like, we've been friends for, you know, I don't know how many years now, 8, 9, something like that. Probably about
I
8, 9
met
years.
you when I'm 32 now, so I probably met you, oh God, was I probably, 20 odd?
Yeah, I had the gym, so probably 8-9 years, and he was like a friend of a friend, and then we kind of mixed and done a few, but we talked, but we weren't like bestest of friends, we was there and different social circles really, like, but then I visited him on the day of my accident, then we came to see you and had my accident. And actually, Josh sort of convinced me then to kind of document it on Instagram. We put a post on it, went kind of crazy. And then,
Was it your birthday? Is that right?
So yeah, without interrupting, this is the power of it for me is that we had known one another through India's godfather, James Bucky, our mutual best mate, and I just was really fond of Tano because of Bucky. Like if Bucky's fond of someone, they are a sound person, and he'd obviously had a big impact in Bucky's life. Little did I know the impact he'd have in mine, and that's how we became friendly. And on my birthday, him and Kate came to meet India for the first time, and that was it was a huge day for me because my best mates in the world got to meet my little girl, and a really proud day. And yeah, I mean he'll share the rest, but I remember just being in a car on the way back with India's mother, just gleaming and actually saying to her, like, I want to get a bike now. I mean, look how cool that is. He's got his son on the back of his bike, the daughter's on the back of his girlfriend's bike. What an adventure. And actually managed to persuade her. She was like, you know what? Yeah, it's actually quite a cool thing. Little did I know, about half an hour later, I'd get a phone call to say that he'd been in this horrific accident. We didn't actually at the time know the implications of what, was to come. And that, I would say, was one of the most defining moments in my life, to be honest with you.
but it's like going back to the friendship, though, how much has grown from there, like, and I feel like you said, through the last certainly few years, you've gone through, like, I obviously split up with the mother of my children, like, quite young, so I went through that at a young age. But then to help Josh navigate through that in a way, like, the amount of times he's called me and I'll give him a different perspective on things because I've kind of been through it, and we've gone from strength to strength, like the amount of times we speak now, and that has come from that, so we are best friends, before we was friends, but we are best friends, so that's since the accident.
And he was, for me, the really important thing when I was on TV is you need to come away having made the most of that experience. And that can be anything for anyone. To some, it can be sleeping with women, partying, it can be materialistic things, the car they bought or whatever it may be. For me, genuinely, I don't give a shit about money. I care in the sense that it's important to pay the mortgage and make sure that I give India the life that I have been fortunate enough to have, and to make sure she's secure, to have the freedom to do things if I'd like to, like traveling, doing different things. But for me, what's really important is actually when you have that platform, you've got to make the most of it, and you have to impact the environment you have around you, whether that be strangers, family, or friends. And when Tano had his accident, for me, I was just like, it's crazy how this platform it's just been set up. The knowledge that I've inherited over the years of being in it, through my own social platform, that's why I straight away was like, listen, I think you have a real opportunity here to document your journey from start until whenever. And by doing that, what was really important for me was to give him purpose every day. Now, although he was just lay in a hospital bed, probably feeling a bit like a vegetable, I knew that there was something that we could do to make that change. And so even though I would say we were close at the time, I didn't realize how much closer this was going to bring us. And so by getting him to post on socials, I mean, immediately he generated a large following. So many of my followers were just so invested in him because it wasn't necessarily relatable, but it was inspiring. And it was real content, and he was a father, he was also a partner of a beautiful girlfriend. And people like to see these success stories. They wanted to be a part of this journey and see his growth. And then I remember when I got a phone call from him, and this was a huge moment in our friendship, where he was like, listen, mate, I have just been told I'm never going to walk again. And I can't accept that. That's not my fate. I've got to walk. And the funny thing about him is he tends to worry sometimes about things that are so far ahead. You know, Fern at the time, I think, was like 10. No, younger. How old? 9 or 10 or...
She was, 9, nearly 10.
And the two things that worried him the most, number one was not being able to walk Fern down the aisle when she got married. Bear in mind, she was 9. And the second was, if the house is burning down, not being able to pick up the kids and take them out. So straight away, it wasn't about him. It was just about
Not
the
worried,
kids.
they're just kind of like, I think, it's been took away from me, you know, so.
And so you wanted to be active, and he was like, I need to think of something for me to keep going. And so he did his research, and he wanted to do the Berlin Marathon. And the funny thing is, tell them the story about when you told the nurse, and she was like, what do you mean you're doing a marathon? That one, you were like, you just got...
That was the athletics lady, wasn't it? Yeah, so, I mean, I didn't have a down day. Like, on the first podcast I've told you, like third day I cried for about 20 minutes, but for those things, like, how am I going to save the kids? Like,
and just quickly so Josh, you got the call. There was a motorbike accident where actually the two of you had, your friend had crashed into you, which had left you paralysed. And then so this is fast forward a couple of weeks after that.
So in and out of consciousness, like I had a rough couple of weeks, obviously operations and rods in my back and stuff like that. But once I came round and like kind of processed this, like cried for 20 minutes, and I was like, right, I'm fine. This dude's fine. I just dealt with it. What was we saying before though? I've lost what I was going to say.
We're just talking. No, it was about that story. It was the story of that person's reaction.
So this is the lady with the athletics commission. So straight away I'd accepted it. I thought, right, I'm in a wheelchair. I'm going to need to be the best person in the wheelchair I can be. Like, this is easy. I've got this. So I contacted the lady from the athletics commission for like disabled sports, and she called me and was like, okay, so you want to try wheelchair athletics? I was like, yeah. She said, how long have you been paralysed? I was like, 3 weeks. And she was like, 3 weeks? She's like, what, you've been out of hospital 3 weeks? I said, no, I'm still strapped to a bed in hospital. She was like, I've never had a call from anybody who's still strapped to a hospital bed. I was like, well, look, my life's changed. I need to get cracking. She was like, look, get yourself out of hospital and give me another call. So that was...
And it's calls like that. And I remember getting a phone call, and I was with India's mum at the time, and he said, listen, mate, I've just been told I'm never going to walk again. And typically when you're told that, your world comes to an end. You're like, this is mental. My best mate isn't going to walk again. But the funny thing is, because immediately after he said that, he went, but just, I've been doing research and I really want to do a marathon. Berlin is just under a year away, which gives me enough time to kind of like semi-prepare for it and get myself back to a point where I need to be, which he didn't prepare for. He did kayaking instead. The synergy between those two sports makes absolutely no sense. Whereas I fully committed my life to it because of this phone call where he basically said, listen, I really want you to do the marathon with me. And I thought he meant run alongside him. And actually he wanted me to be in a wheelchair. So I committed to it and said, absolutely. And I remember getting off the phone and India's mother was like, what was that about? Then I said, I've just been told that Tano's not going to walk again. She was as gutted about it as I was. And then I started laughing. She was like, why is that funny? I was like, well, no, that's not funny. But somehow I'm now doing the Berlin Marathon with him in a wheelchair, which she obviously laughed and was like, what? Yeah. So what was a really negative moment turned into a really positive one. And I would say that was the catalyst of who I am today and why I do the things that I do, because that journey of being in the chair, I fully committed to it like a method actor, where I would commute to work in my wheelchair and I would not get out of it. Like if I hit a curb and I couldn't get over it, sometimes I'd spend 10 minutes ramming this curb trying to get over it, and eventually I would. But by doing that, I was trying to invest into how it feels and what he was going through to really understand, empathize, and then in future be able to support him through what he was going through. But also by being able to utilize, going back to the original point of like the platform of what I had, being able to share that with my audience, it became so much bigger than just him and I. It became about the world and how we could impact those that in future were going to sustain similar injuries and the impact we could have on them immediately. So rather than looking at it going, my world has ended, my world has just begun in a different way, or those that are going through that or have gone through that their entire lives, lives, trying to show them inspiration that an individual like myself, whether you want to do the divide of able-bodied or non, that people do care. And I did. And it's not typically what a lot of people would maybe necessarily do within the industry. And I did feel the blunt of it. You know, brands would turn their nose at me, or I lost 10,000 followers when I announced I was doing it with him because people didn't want to follow me for that. That's fine. But that's exactly why we're doing it. No matter how many doors you have shutting on your face, or how many people unfollow you, or they turn your nose, you're not doing it to try and turn their attention, but you are doing it to impact them. And like I said at that first point, they might not care then, but in 5 or 10 years' time, that seed has been planted. It's just a case of when they're ready to take that process or start it.
Wow, that's amazing. And that is purpose. Having a purpose outside of yourself, or a goal outside of yourself. Like I really felt that when you said to impact people, even who haven't even had an accident yet, who sadly are going to have similar accidents, that you can be or have something there that's going to inspire them or impact them.
That was the main thing. I think obviously, like, when he shared it, my story went crazy. Like, I gained 30,000 followers fairly quick, and straight away that was like a real nice, not to gain the followers, but instantly I had all the encouraging messages, and then people were sending me messages of how I'd inspired them to do more. I was like, wow, this injury has got a real purpose, you know, like just knowing you've helped somebody through just telling your story, that did every day. Like he said, he wanted that to give me something to do, and genuinely I thought, cool, like, by me being inspiring and just being happy and getting through this, like, it's helping everybody, you know. So it's like people get followers for the sake of having followers, but mine was genuinely to help people. And I was like, I'm really lucky that happened early on, because it inspired people to do more. It
shows the power that a major event can have in shifting your perspective and how you see the world. I was chatting about this, a very different example, but I was chatting with my wife about this yesterday, of how my relationship with money has just drastically changed since I left the corporate world. I used to literally place my worth and my value and how skilled I was in my job on how much money I got at the end of the month. That was my value. Even if, as happens in sales every now and then, you get a deal which you didn't really even actually have that much of a hand in, that meant I was good. That means I'm good. Even if I'm not done, and I know I've not done anything really other than be that account manager or whatever it is, that meant I was good. Whereas now, and it's only almost a year to the date that I've left and I'm now full-time with this, now money is just a means for bigger impact, more opportunities, more things I can invest in to hopefully lead to other opportunities and further growth, which growth being that end goal. But it's just like, it takes a big change in your life to have that shift, and sometimes we can talk about it a lot, and I felt like I understood it, but I didn't until I actually went through it.
See, I would say, just to before you get onto a 50-minute reply,
it's like pressing the button.
I'm next. I would say that the most negative thing to come from my accident, though, is money. And you know, you won't hear me talk too much about like money. I mean, I've always worked hard and done okay, but money's never really meant anything to me. My superpower was always my ability, like my belief in myself. Like, you know, I've got a successful business, I've done well, but I never was worried if that failed the next day. I always had that belief, like, I could get on a plane, I could go anywhere, and I could start again. Like, I'd work in a coffee shop. Money didn't bother me, but I had that ability taken away from me. Like, my physical health took away, and obviously that wasn't my fault. So there's an insurance claim and stuff going on, and the only real compensation I get from that is money. And I've been going through this whole process for 4 years of like an insurance claim dispute, and you know, I'm really positive and I'm doing well, but then, you know, you got the person there trying to pay you as little for doing well, and it's really, there's been a real negative thing to come from this. And it's just funny, like, money is irrelevant, but it does add so much stress to people's life. Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about, because it's really interesting you say that, and no matter how positive we sound in this conversation, because we're sat with each other, right? So that we're probably in a heightened state here anyway. I have down days, really down, dark days still. You're saying that though, so we have these peaks and troughs. You're saying that there's still times where you get fucked off, you get irritated with certain things. And Josh, you've said there that your lowest periods have been recently, which have led to your events. I want to come to your challenges in a minute, but can we talk a little bit about that roller coaster and how we manage that?
That's life. Like, it doesn't matter how much self-healing you do, or how good the environment is you have around you, or what your principles are, you can't change what is to come. And there are many, many negative moments in your life to come. But what I would say is that through your life, you've been through many already. And actually what you've got to take from that is that you've overcome it, and you will overcome them again. Now, when you face adversity in life, it's never nice. Most of the time it's really shit. But what I would say is that you are better prepared to face it, and certainly a stronger person. And I think that's the problem, is that we don't empower ourselves, and we don't see the strength that we have within, maybe because we haven't been shown that. You know, sometimes you do need someone to just turn to you and say, you're an EasyJet, they're absolutely mashing up my speech. No, what I was going to say was, sometimes all it takes is for somebody just to turn around and go, that's incredible. Like, do you see what you've just said there? Just to acknowledge it. Because sometimes just thinking it isn't quite enough. Sometimes you do need that person just to tap you on the shoulder and say, you know, 100% what you've just said.
I think you don't grow unless you go through tough times. You know, I think that is actually when you level up. You know, like they say, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor, and that is true. And it's just learning to navigate and understand that life's not going to be easy, isn't it? You know, you got to go. Life's not easy. You're going to go through tough times, but I mean, I've certainly learned through this life's about balance. And like you said, there's a coping mechanism for me. Like, I think if you've got, say, 5 things what should be important to you, that might be children, that might be time to yourself, work, obviously money, time with friends. Like, if you can work out them 5 things what actually mean the most to you, at the end of the month, you should always kind of have a check-in on them 5 things, because, you know, I've done it during my life where I've had 6 months a year of like going out with my friends loads, but then that creates an angry missus, or your children are getting as much attention. So I've been guilty of leaving it 6 months to actually notice I'm doing that. So now at the end of each month, as a coping mechanism for me, I check in on them 5 things, and I think, right, actually this month I've spent a bit too much time with my friends, but I haven't spent enough time by myself. And if one of those things goes out of balance, then it affects the other 4. So for a coping mechanism for me now is to each month just check in and say, what have I done too much of this month? What do I need to do less of next month?
Or not enough of.
And that way I'm only sort of 4 weeks out of sync, you know, so you can adjust it then.
Yeah.
You know, when someone goes 6 months, like if you started going out every weekend now and didn't see your wife and children, she's going to be angry. 6 months, you've got a big problem to solve. But if you only do that a month, then you can correct
if I've got 1 weekend, I'll be happy at the minute.
Yes, that's right.
I think you've got to like ask yourself the question, with anything you do in life, you know, does it better you? Does it better your environment? And does it better the world? And I know some people might listen to that and they'll go, oh, fuck, like that's so airy-fairy. But like, it really is true. Like, what you do in life, does it better the world? And if it doesn't, then I think you have to ask yourself the question, why is that? And I think that's the problem, is that just kind of going back to when you were talking about money, you know, my biggest frustration is that the media right now, they really do credit and emphasize, I personally think, a lot of the wrong role models in this world. I don't waste my energy on it going, oh, we need to fucking revolt and make a big song and a dance about it. But like, you know, we emphasize so much Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and my frustrations with these guys are the 2 richest men in the world, and their priority is to go to space. Why? Why is there this urgency now for us to go to space? If there are problems with the world, leaving the world is not the answer. It's fixing the world that we live in. Why is the priority when somebody makes more money to make more money and not to help more people around them? Most people, when they become richer, their first priority is to buy a bigger house, right? Or a more expensive car or a second home, instead of going, why not start a school? Why not fund a community that's underprivileged? And I know a lot of people might go, oh, it's bollocks, mate. You know, like, who actually does that? A lot of people actually, but we don't emphasize those. You know, we emphasize the rapper who's decided to have gold chains implanted in his head or a diamond put onto their forehead. And you think, why? Why are we wasting our time with those individuals? Because if you actually delve deep into that individual's life, are they doing that because they are 100% sure of themselves, or are there a fuck ton of insecurities coming out? That's not me criticizing. That's me just looking at it going, why does somebody need to spend 24 million on a diamond to stick it on their forehead? What logical reason is there for that? And the funny thing about a lot of these individuals is that they come from really underprivileged backgrounds. So why has that not humbled them? Why do they not stick true to their roots? And the problem is because of the environment that they're in is manufacturing and producing a person that they were never.
There's and we will have all felt this. There's the darker energy and the lighter energy. The darker energy is when you can fuel the anger and the hate that you might have from events that have taken place, and that's probably where they are, right? Maybe younger periods in their life, and they've used that constructively to get themselves out of their shit situation, but then it's landed them in probably far beyond what they ever imagined they'd be able to do, and you kind of that's a lost feeling that feels very similar to probably how they felt at the beginning of that journey as well. But whereas when you go through that, and again, not to touch on the who are you thing again, but when you can build self-awareness and realise, oh, fucking hell, yeah, I'm spending however much on a diamond just to try and look different or look like I've got it all together, that energy changes to a lighter energy. But then that, again, that's having to force yourself to face the resistance.
I think so much of who we are and how we are as adults is actually set from a child as well. You know, like so much of our experiences as a child leading up to our teenage years sets who we are as an adult. And I think sometimes things are hard to undo. You know, I know some of the biggest men in the gym and like actually real tough men who were bullied there as a kid still have no confidence. And no matter how big and how strong and good they get at boxing, they still have that. They've just that's been beaten out of them as a kid. They can't get that back. And they're just sort of parenting like we're now going through. You know, it's such a
inside they're still the bullied kid. That's how they see themselves,
and they can't lose that.
Yeah.
You know, even like and you see them in the boxing ring, and you think, "Cool, this one, they're like really good at this sport." But then when it comes to the process of actually going to fight, they can't do it because they've not got that confidence, and they're just set from a child, you know. And the same with you, like seeing these rappers spending all the money. Like I know people who come from really wealthy upbringings. You know, you won't hear them talk about money because they've always had it. But then I know people who are wealthy now and have come from nothing. That's all they talk about because they never had it. You know, and it's really strange how our upbringings kind of the most. You know, I've now got teenage children, and it's kind of like I'm like, wow, like it's now starting to get scary. You know, you've both got it all to come. Like, and I love being a parent. You know, like being a dad is the best thing to me, and children is great. But I tell you, now they start getting teenagers, that's like, whoa, this is a different whole ball game to parenting because the parenting is done. Like, and I'll stress this to you, like you have to give them enough life knowledge between now and 13 because my daughter's 13, she's making her own decisions now. And they're scary. When she leaves the house, like before, when they're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they're with me. I know what they're doing. When she leaves the house now at 13, I only know what she tells me when she comes home. And you're like, wow, like, I hope she's listened to everything I've given her. And it's just crazy. Like all the important things they're doing at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, they're doing with the least amount of knowledge on life, like, and that is scary, you know.
I remember calling both of you because Tanner, you said you got teenage daughters, and Josh, yours is 4. Yeah. So mine's 15 months. I remember calling both of you for advice, like panicking. But I said to both of you, which I still fully believe, like you're both very inspiring parents. You know, it's interesting that you said that because my perception of you is. Both of you is that you're amazing parents and you inspire me to be a better parent as well. What have you guys learned since becoming a parent, whether that's about yourself, about others? What have been some of the big learnings?
India, I mean, my situation, I think it's really hard because I kind of don't want to go into too much of it because I have to be very careful, and it's really tricky because anything I say, I never want it to impact India. But I think my biggest frustration is how do I say it? Like when your environment tells you that you're no good or you're not capable, you get to a point where you start to believe it. And
you have had a tough time though.
You know, I really have had everything stripped of me, and I've really had my confidence like taken, and that's why I probably have that imposter syndrome after a while, because you start to believe it. And, you know, the one thing I would say is that I have this beautiful little girl who says please and thank you. And she's just so full of character and she's so independent. And I have to thank her mother for that input as well, because she has spent so much time with her. And I think from that's where I maybe take some confidence and go, do you know what, even though maybe you've been told for so long that you're not these things, or you're not capable of this, the fact that your child has spent that period of time with you also and is still that person, if you were all the things that you've been told you are, surely your child therefore would behave or be the extension of those behavioral patterns. And the fact that she's not, it gives me confidence that actually I am doing something right. So although I have these negative voices in my head telling me you're nobody, you're not capable, clearly I am. And so, I need to maybe be a bit kinder to myself for that.
Yeah. I mean, it is, parenting is hard. It's not hard. Like, it's easy in many ways, but like I said, it's different from parenting a kid to a teenager, and like, certainly the biggest thing I learned when I turned to dad was love. Like I think I told you this before, like I'd never felt love like that. Genuinely, you tell people you love them, whatever, like that was just, for me, that was like a light bulb. I was like, wow, I feel this, that was like just a wake up moment for me. But it's just, I don't know, it's magical really having kids.
I would say I'd say there's two things as well. And this, I really want people to listen to this, because I think no matter how tough your situation is with either your other half or the ex, no matter how much negativity might be in that moment, or how you may feel about that other person, what you have to remind yourself of is that they're human. And no matter what they may have said to you or what they may have done, they are going to go through moments similar to you where they think the same or they behave the same, where they may question themselves or their capabilities, or they equally be going through tricky times. And there's something really powerful, I think, in no matter what the relationship may be like or how tainted it may be, we're just sending a text of praise for something that they have been a part of. And although they may not respond to that text and say thank you, or you can actually physically see the appreciation, that will impact them. And that's something that I've really, really focused on, I would say, over the last 6 months to a year, is that it's really important to showcase that to that individual. And I think never go into something wanting something in return, because if you do, that's when you'll be disappointed. Just do it because it's the right thing to do, and it's because you want to do it.
I think it's, for me, like the stage I'm at now as well, you have to remember, like, you can go through life thinking, oh, your child should do this and you want them to do that, and well, I done this so they should do that. Like, you have to really remember that they are their own people.
Yeah.
Like, we are who we are today because of the mistakes we made. Our parents told us things we didn't listen to and do it, and there's an element of me doing that now where I'm thinking, Jude isn't me. He's not going to like the same things I do. He's not going to be good at what I was good at. Like, Jude is Jude, and you have to, there's a stage where you have to let that go and just think, right, go and be your own person, make your mistakes. And it's hard at first, because you do try parent them and tell them to do what you've done, but they're not going to be. You have to let them be themselves.
I think it's such an interesting one. Last night I was finding it really tough. I was realising that I can't bear to see Lyra in pain. And I think that's because I didn't allow myself to feel pain when I was younger. So it kind of triggers it, brings out. I was like, she'd just been ill when she had an ear infection. But even if she falls over and bangs her head or anything like that, I'm like, I feel it so painfully. You feel like it's almost like happening to you. And
that's that love and protection. That's just the
pure,
natural,
unconditional. And
I had it with my mum when I had my accident. So my mum used to come into the hospital every day, and my outlook on it was like, I'm fine with being paralysed because Jude's fine. I would much rather push myself around in a wheelchair than have to push Jude around and break my heart. But my mum kept coming into the hospital, and every time she came in, she had a sad face. And I said to her, I was like, Mum, like, if you keep coming in being sad and negative, I don't want you visiting me because I'm not sad or negative. And she said to me, she said, you have to realise though, Ben, like, you're fine because Jude's right. You're my Jude. And I'm like, yes, right. Yeah, I am your baby, and you kind of get it, you grow up. So
there's also, I saw studies recently that say that for the mum specifically, they found studies which show the DNA from the mother still in the child like 20 years after they were born.
Okay.
Which means there is a physical connection, not just like an emotional connection, a physical connection between the mother and the kid,
Yeah.
probably their whole lives. I don't know if it goes beyond 20 years, but how mad is that?
I think also parents have got to understand that there are moments in a child's life, and don't ever underestimate a child's age. You know, obviously you hear people saying, oh, you know, they're not receptive until this age, or they don't, you know, necessarily understand what's going through. One really, really special moment, which I actually have the video, is when I was training for the Berlin Marathon with Tano. And when I used to bring India back to Norfolk, I would get in the wheelchair and my dad would push India. We did this several times and she gets so irritated in the pram. And it was, you know, sometimes at that age they can be irrational anyway. It can literally be anything that triggers them. And we couldn't quite figure out what it was. And then she was only, I think she wasn't even 2 at this point, maybe just before. And then one day we went for our typical walk and Dad decided to just let her out the pram to see what it is that she wanted. And the first thing she did, and he was filming this anyway, was she came straight over to me and all she wanted to do was push me in my wheelchair. And this video is 2.5 minutes long, where anytime, because the problem was her little legs, anytime I'd probably build a bit of momentum and go ahead of her, she'd get worked up because she wasn't pushing me. She wanted to be a part of the process. And actually, she may not remember that. I'll have the video forever to be able to show her. But what I love about that is it just shows you the compassion that a child can have, even of that age, that they want to support you. Whether that was me or anyone, you know, I don't know. But just seeing that was huge for me. And what I love about exposing, or not exposing, but, you know, surrounding her with individuals like Tano, is that from a young age it's really important, I think, for the impact that these individuals have, that by seeing her dad who walks in a wheelchair but also seeing Uncle Tano in a wheelchair too, is that she doesn't see a wheelchair, she sees a person. And I think that's maybe the issue we're having with children right now, is that we're maybe disconnecting them from these different realities. And I'm not saying we could ever eradicate bullying by connecting them maybe at an earlier age, but normalizing it I think is really important. And that's what I mean by, I think we're underestimating the impact, or the, you know, the ability that we could have with these younger children. But certainly seeing the challenges that I do and the people that I'm surrounding India with, I hope, and I can certainly see the impact that it's having on her. How that will define her in the future, you know, I've doubted myself my entire life, and I'm hoping that through my trouble, or maybe my limitations that I've put on myself, hopefully that's something that I can change for her.
Well, I can tell you what she gets from you is
Her big front teeth.
Her little personality is like second to none.
she gets strength, 100%. She gets ambition. She will have an open mind. One of the best things that I heard, parental advice, this was from a guy called David Meltzer, who they based the film Jerry Maguire on, which is one of my favourite films. He was on the podcast, I think, about 18 months ago. He said, they won't listen to you. Your children won't listen to you, but they'll be watching you.
Yeah.
So everything that they see, and she sees that in you every day. So I hope that brings some solace to you for, you know, your negative thoughts every now and then. Like what she sees you do, like the same that I see you do it, is so inspiring. And that's what she'll be getting from you.
Yeah, I guess it's just for so long, you know, I look at most dads, like India's just started big school now, she's doing reception, and I look at the dads around me, you know, and these guys are really successful men driving expensive cars. I'm not saying that credits them, but, you know, these guys are good at something, you know, whether they're CEOs of companies or they're owners of companies. Sounds really stupid, but they can do a spreadsheet. You know, I'm not even capable of doing something like that. And so I look around them and I think, you know, these are real men, like they've got real capabilities. And then I look at my life and the career I have, and again, it's the doubts of like, you know, what am I good at? You know, it's
spreadsheets and businesses don't make a good parent.
No. I get that.
Love and laughter, like, you know.
I get that, but it's more like the role model, right? You know, like my life's not conventional. I think that's the point I'm making, is that what I do isn't conventional. You know, at my age, typically, most people don't do what I do. Not saying that that's better or worse, but like, you know, I look at these guys and they've got like, you know, like routine and like maybe stability, whereas I'm just like this free spirit who seems to just kind of like not whim things, but like, you know, I sometimes think, God, am I going to impact my daughter's life? Is this going to be a positive? And, you know, I hope later down the line, from the moments that I've shared, that, you know, hopefully it will.
The free spirit for me no comparison here, but the free spirit approach to life is one that I would have liked to have seen more of when I was younger, for sure. Now we're all pursuing that. All three of us are pursuing that, right? And what does that make us feel? Because I got so deep into that conventional life and something bad had to happen to snap me out of that. I wish I'd have been exposed more to that when I was younger.
But I do think naturally as well, we always want something we kind of never had.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we didn't have free-spirited parents, you know, we probably want them. But the people who had free-spirited parents probably want people who are a bit more at home doing work and stuff like that. It's just, I think human nature, sometimes we want what we didn't have.
Yeah.
But, you know, that just is how it is. You know, everybody, if everybody did everything the same, we'd all be quite similar. So there is no right or wrong way to parent. You know, everyone has their own way, and that's why some people turn out good, some people turn out bad. But I think, you know, you're both doing great. You know, you're nice, like people. You know, you just got to show them love and be yourself, and let them grow to who they want to be. You know, because like I said, you can tell them everything, but they're still going to be their own person at the end of the day. You know, like Jude, I'll give him all the right lessons, but if he wants to go out and really mess his life up, he's going to do that. And no matter what I say to him now at 15 years old, he's making his own decisions, you know. So I wouldn't overthink it too much, you know, like definitely don't tell. So I can tell you now you're a good dad. Like, you know, the little girl's always laughing, smiling, and that's the main thing.
This thing, what I would say about India is that this is a really important moment in our relationship right now where, you know, I'm starting to hear her say, I can't, you know, I can't, Daddy, I can't. And she doubts herself. And there's a fine line between, I think, pushing a child too far and knowing when to push them. You know, so there's times where she's fearful of things, you know, like going on a paddle board or being in water, swimming, whatever it may be. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely times where we've heard and seen stories where parents become, you know, way too overbearing, and it becomes quite traumatic for the child. But then at the same time, through our own experiences, it's learning when to press the red button and when to just pull that hand back a little bit further. And what I would say is, I think through my own experiences, is that I've got this great relationship with her now where I know when to push her that little bit further because I know it's in her. I know when we get there, she'll love it. And I've been right, thankfully, every time. And the moments when I hear her saying, I can't, it can be something as simple as putting on her pajama bottoms or taking a t-shirt off. And she's like, I can't, and gives up. And so it's a process that sometimes takes quite a long time, and you've got to have the patience. But when I tell her she can, and I show her, when she eventually does it for herself, she does. It's like, I just want to bottle it, but she does like this subtle grin where she knows deep down that Daddy's proven her wrong, but for the right reasons. And then we do this high five. And for me, it's so small, but it's amazing. And I hope, again, it sounds really silly, but because it's small, it's just about like putting on a t-shirt. But whenever she has that, I can't, I want her to reflect on those moments as she gets older and knows that she can.
And it does, like I said to you earlier, like so much of how we are as kids affect our adult life. And I just listening to you say that, like, knowledge is everything, you know, like we have so much access to information now as like people, and obviously people study mindsets and stuff like that. I listened to a TED talk actually about mindset within children, and like simple things of like, you know, when Jude used to play football, and I didn't know this when Jude was a kid. I wish I had done, because it does make sense. If he came off the football pitch, I'd be like, "Cool, you played really well today. You're so good at that. You're so good at that," and I would put it down to a talent based kind of thing. And I always done it with, and I didn't know this, but since listening to the TED talk, like they say, if he'd have come off the pitch and I'd have said to him, "Cool, you tried really hard today," then it's down to an effort based kind of talent. So they'd done a test before where all the kids, what they had done based on talent, after so long didn't do too well, because they were so worried that if they failed, they wouldn't get that, oh, then you're not talented anymore. So they didn't kind of excel as much as the kids who put it down to effort based, because they thought, oh, the harder I try, the better I'm going to get. And over a course of 10 years, those kids came out on top. So that open or closed mindset, I think they call it. And little tips like that, I think you've known as a parent, like certainly with your daughter now, if she does something, try to emphasize it on effort rather than actual talent, you know, and that's just knowledge through watching the TED talk, you know. So we are actually got access to kind of change things better now, but little tips like that help.
It's so powerful, that one. It's, when I was playing football in America, or soccer in America, they had hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work
got
hard.
it in the gym.
Have you?
Yeah, it's on the wall.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, it's, you know, it's the corny saying, but it's so true.
Yeah, it is,
right?
yeah.
It's amazing when you see that, if you're training in the gym or whatever you're doing, it rings true. But you're absolutely bang on, because talent isn't in our control necessarily.
No.
We can develop skills, but talent isn't in our control, but hard work is.
But you wouldn't realise how much that affects a kid. Like certainly didn't think of it. Like just my son coming off the football pitch and me saying, "Cool, you're really good at that. You're really good at." I'm praising him, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get more from him." Whereas just if I'd have just said, "Cool, you tried hard today," that might shape his life in such a dramatic way of his effort into life. And I've done that without even thinking about it.
But I'm thinking when you're saying that, right? Because talent, how we understand talent, is God given. We're born with it, right? So if I've played crap and it's about talent, then I've got no self worth. I'm just shit. I'm useless. Whereas if I'm praised on my effort, I wasn't born with effort.
No.
I just put effort in, and that. If that's what I'm being rewarded on, then I'm going to do it again.
But how many people just parent and kind of wouldn't even think of that, and they're just, there's so many kids coming off a football pitch as we speak, and their dads are saying, "Cool, you're really good at that. You're really good at that." Whereas if they just listen to this and they'll start saying, "Actually, you tried really hard today," that might just change the young kid's life. It's just crazy.
It's about hunger as well, right? Like, how far are you willing to go? And I think that's the problem that a lot of people lack, again, is they're only willing to go to a certain point, and then I guess when a few doors are closed on their face or they don't accomplish what they wanted, I would say probably the rejections that I faced of what has made me so hungry. And that's something that I think we need to instill in our children. And I don't know if the work rate is necessarily there for quite a lot of them. And actually, you can be rejected 1,000 times. I think that's why we celebrate these stories when you hear of these individuals who have taken 30 years to win an Oscar, or started their acting careers late, or when it comes to, football, for instance, like a Vardy playing non-league football and then wins the Premiership. It's amazing. And we need those individuals in this world, because there are millions of people out there that gave up. And it's because they didn't have the support. And what I would say to them is, sometimes, unfortunately, this is the tough pill to swallow. You might never have it. And it really does come down to you. How much do you fucking want to succeed? Because if you don't have that support network, you got two options. You can either give up and regret it for the rest of your life, or you can keep fucking pursuing it. I've never known anyone who has pursued something maybe their entire life and gone, "Oh, I really regret doing that." Why? Because what happens if you had have succeeded? And actually, there is real merit in the fact that you never gave up. And we forget that. When I do these challenges, I'm not the fastest. I'm not the most gifted, or intelligent. But where I am smart is I surround myself with those that are, and they make me greater, And for me, I do want to be recognized, not for validation, but if I'm doing something, I want to have an impact. I do want to be recognized as one of the greatest ultra athletes to ever come from the UK. Not fussed about the world, but from the UK. And I want to impact for the right reasons those around me through the charity work. Am I going to get there because I was born a gifted runner or in a wheelchair? Absolutely not. But fucking hell, I absolutely grind it out. And anyone will tell you that. Ben, my running coach, who's one of the most gifted athletes I've ever met, and he's just about to start his journey. Ben Park, he's 24. The guy's an absolute machine. Sometimes when we train, this is the difference. When we look at athletes on the TV, we just see like these godlike figures, right? There's no weakness. And the way that they articulate themselves, and we see these edited versions on YouTube, we're just like so pumped up and inspired by them. The way I look at it is, I'm just this little bitch. I complain, get it wrong, or maybe have days where I take it off and it frustrates him, and maybe sometimes he has like slight doubt in his mind, thinking, fuck, what am I coaching here? Like, can this guy do it? The one thing I said to him though is, never ever doubt me, because no matter how distorted the process might be leading up to the challenge, I fucking promise you, when it comes to the day of it, I will switch it onto another level like you've never seen. And he did doubt me. And I think the two really big moments in our relationship together that changed things for him, one was the patio challenges, and the second obviously was Run 4 Nations. And it was about 2 a.m. when he took over the third marathon. And it went from me being 30 minutes ahead of schedule to us actually losing time. And if I'd have continued going at the pace I was at, we would have failed the challenge. And there was this moment where he turned to me and he was quite blunt and he said, "Do you want to fail?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, if you fucking keep going at this pace, we failed. Do you want to fail? And I said, no, I don't. He said, you got one choice, and that's to pick up this pace, and you cannot drop this pace until the race is over. And there was something in that moment, like I said, I just went into a different fucking headspace, and the pace kept progressing and progressing and progressing. My injuries were getting worse to the point where I was run limping. That went out the fucking window. Didn't matter how much pain I'd sustained at that point. For me, like the thought of failure. And there was this really powerful line that has kind of stayed with me with my challenges, where it's like, when you do something in life, is the feeling of failure, no, how do I articulate it? It's fucking annoying that I haven't managed to smooth this out. But for me, I guess it's when you go into it, it's like you can give up, but is the feeling of failure going to outweigh the temporary pain? Does that make sense? I knew at the end of that challenge, right? Didn't matter how much pain I was going to go through at that moment. The minute I finished that race and I crossed that line, that pain may take a week to recover from it, but it eventually comes to an end. But will the feeling of failure outweigh it? Because if you live through that through life, can you overcome
I think
it?
there was a saying, something like pain lasts for a moment, failure lasts for a lifetime, something like that.
That would have been a lot smoother, by the way. If I'd have just
Yeah.
come out with that line, it would have sounded better.
Can we? Because you're talking about. So it's hard to know where to go after that, because it was absolutely amazing, like everything you guys were saying. So you started with talking about I can't, and specifically about your daughter, and hearing those words, and then talking about how you can start to overcome that. And then you went on to the challenges, which I've been desperate to get to the whole time. So can you talk about, because I find it so fascinating, experiences from both of you, because Tanner, would love to hear your experience with the I can't as well, with you know, the idea of being told that you can't ever walk again. Moments in either the patio challenge, and can you talk about what that patio challenge was, because it's unreal, and the Run 24 challenge, when you might have heard a voice that said I can't, and then I'm really, really fascinated to hear, you said you went into a different mindset, you just went into a different place, and then the pace went up and up and up.
Yeah.
So can you talk about this?
So during the first lockdown, I had been training for quite a big challenge, which no longer was going to happen. It will eventually happen now. Kind of we're coming out of the pandemic, or I'd like to think we are. But at the time, we were in lockdown, and I got a phone call from a friend who worked at Calm Charity and said, listen, we've had about a 37% increase in phone calls. Like, we are really struggling right now, and we need to raise funds. And I was really, really, like, as somebody who struggled with his mental health in the past and present with, you know, anxiety, that really pulled a chord. Like, I if I can do anything to help anyone in the present or for the future, I'm going to do it. And it doesn't matter how far I have to go to do it. If I can help that person, I'm willing to go the distance. And at the time, we were restricted to be able to only run, I think it was 5K. So I was thinking to myself, well, I've been doing this training. What can I do? So at 1 a.m, I went and measured my patio, which was 15 feet. But because of my olive trees, it was 14 foot. So I remember calling up my running coach. And I said, listen, mate, I'm going to do 5 marathons in 5 days. And that was when he turned around and went, what are you talking about? He's like, mate, come on now. Like, that's just stupid. And I said, no, I'm going to do it. And I announced it to my social page. Never done consecutive marathons. I'd only run 1 or 2 marathons in my life, and not even really for time. And
but it was marathons on your patio.
on my 14-foot patio.
In a circle, like, well, square, kind of circle.
80 loops for 1 mile, basically, to achieve 1 mile.
And then did you turn around and go the other way?
Yes, every mile I would change, right? So I ended up doing 4 and 4. And then on the 5th day, I decided to do an ultra, which I'd never done before, right? And actually, what a lot of people don't know about this particular challenge is the main thing was to raise money for those that needed it. But deep down, there were 3 people in my life that told me that I wasn't. And I wanted to show them that I was. And again, it's really annoying for the listener, but I can't go into it. But there was a really big moment for me where I was subjected to something, and I still feel it today. It really angers me and it really upsets me, because ultimately 3 people were telling me something that I was not, and were questioning my character as an individual. And so for me, deep down, by doing this, I wanted to show those 3 individuals, even though I would never see them react to it or whether they even saw it, but there was a part of me hoping that they would, to make them actually question themselves as people. And I know a lot of people might be like, God, that's the really wrong way of thinking it. But do you know what? I'm real, and that's just the reality of it.
It's
and
a fuel if you can use it.
It was a fuel.
Yeah.
And tell you what, it was a fucking fuel, because if you've never done consecutive marathons, you've got to find it from somewhere, right?
And it was round your patio. I mean,
and
I can't
it's
stress
ran it.
how. I mean, I think I compared you to a goldfish, like going around a bowl,
Literally.
and that was literally that. And like the foot just. You know, running's lovely. Like, I mean, I can't do it now, but like when you're running and you're running through woods, like it's great. You can do a marathon, but to go round a patio, you know, it's just like, yeah, I generally thought you'd lost the plot.
Like you said, you have to find fuel. And psychologists might be looking at this going, God, he's saying all the wrong things. That's not the right way of doing it. With the greatest respect, when you're throwing yourself into that environment, it's going to fucking break you. And so you have to be able to turn to things that will fuel that fire to enable you to overcome it. And that's why I think a lot of individuals are now going into these ultra sports, because they're delving into a mindset and becoming a person that they maybe never thought could be. And by achieving it, changes their reality of how they see themselves, how they see others, and what's capable. And so I decided to do the ultra, did it. And then there was just something inside me where I was like, fuck, I really just want to try doing 24 hours. Obviously had never done sleep deprivation training, had never run more than the ultra. That was the furthest distance I'd ever done.
Remind me, ultra distance is...
So an ultra distance is anything further than a marathon, 26.2 miles.
All right, cool.
Right? So I actually ended up doing on the 6th day, the 2 marathons in 2 days. And then I wanted to do 24 hours. I wasn't really fussed about the distance, but I wanted to do the 24 hours. And again, I had all this, at the time I was going through 3 legal battles, right? And it was savage, really, really savage. And being enclosed in my flat, you know, it could have gone one way or it could have gone another. So again, this was me going, do you know what? I'm going through a really tough part of my life. I'm going to turn everything negative that I'm going through and I'm going to invest it into something positive. Because when I look back at these negative moments in my life and I think, God, yeah, do you know what? Those 3 legal battles broke me. But actually, I don't feel negativity and I don't feel sad when I reflect on those moments, because what came from it was the amount of money that was raised that helped others and the pride that I feel having accomplished something as big as that. You know, so again, it's turning. Sorry, I thought you were literally going fucking wrap it up here, mate. Talking too long.
No.
No,
but again, it's just turning that negative into a positive, and I accomplished the 24 hours, and that changed me forever. Because if you can accomplish that, you can achieve anything.
And again, the challenge itself was a world record. So do you want to talk a little bit about what actually happens? You did 4 marathons in 4 countries in 24 hours.
So then I came up with the idea. After that, where I was like, do you know what, has anyone ever run marathons in all 4 countries in the UK within, and I thought 24 hours, because it makes it exciting for people.
Mate, were you just to clarify, so you were talking about that bit then, you were still talking about the patio challenge?
No, this is the Run for Nations one.
Cool,
yeah. And that's when the idea after that, I was like, okay, right, so you've done 24 hours. Has anyone done the countries? And the question was no, because no one's a doorknob, right? And no one's going to get a helicopter to fly from a country to country. Luckily, that's where, you know, sometimes my lunacy probably becomes the asset, and they hadn't. And so I remember actually when I came up with the idea, I texted my best mate, James Houston, and I said, listen, I think I know what my next challenge is. I want to run the 4 countries of the UK in 24 hours. And his response was, you fucking idiot, is that possible? And like I said to you, bam. That reaction, I was like, that's it. That's the next challenge. And that was one of the most savage experiences of my life. And the documentary that we filmed it will hopefully give people a better insight, because sometimes when you actually talk about it, it just isn't enough. I think people need that visual. And when you see me physically vomiting in this helicopter and my immunity and my systems broke down and I'm shaking, you know, my body never breaks, and that's my superpower almost when I do these challenges. But for some reason on this one, you know, straight away I tore the ligament in my knee, my calf and my foot in the second marathon. So I basically was running on a fucked left leg for the entire thing. And the pain I was subjected to was just excruciating. And there were so many moments where I never typically will ever think to myself, I want to give up. But on this particular one, actually, when I was with Ben, I did genuinely want to give up. I didn't think I could take it much more. And it's, you know, in films, when you kind of see like this sequence where it just recaps on like 100 different scenes into one, right, with sped up music. For me, it's like every negative thing that I've ever been through in my life in that moment is like that sequence where I remind myself of all these negatives and why I'm doing this. And then it just fucking like this thing comes out of me. And that is what enables me to overcome these hurdles.
Just channeling those things to give you the power.
Yeah.
Wow. So is it like, so if we talk literally a tangible thing, you'll feel broken physically or mentally, and then you'll think about those things and it'll give you energy.
100%. I have to. It's my time. It's a lot of people look at these things, at these challenges, and they're like, God, why do you do it? It's one of the few times in my life where I'm most at peace, and I feel like I have purpose. In all honesty, like when I do it, I feel like I genuinely have purpose in this world, that I'm actually doing something to make the world a better place.
What I think is so powerful about it is because with the coaching work that I do, a lot of people live within their own limits. I talk about this glass ceiling where, again, we talked about our youth and how that shapes us. We all have this, we have self-limiting beliefs, and we have a glass ceiling that a lot of the time we don't even know is there. So the goals that we set will be within that.
Yeah.
But what you've had the ability to do is smash through that. And people call it a big, hairy, audacious goal. But what you've done is you've picked something and you've honed in on and had a focus on something which is far beyond a lot of people's imagination of what's possible. And then you've gone on and achieved it.
Every human being in this world is born limitless, but we are our greatest limitation. That's the facts. And that is because of the environment that we are born into or we are subjected to. And that's why I will become the person that I want to be, and I will achieve the things that I wish to do because I have Tano in my life. Every time I have a moment of doubt, I look at Tano and I look at what he's going through on a daily basis and the hurdles he's faced with and overcomes. Now, if Tano can accomplish these things at a 70-80% functional body, what excuses do I have? I struggle mentally at times, but I've seen time and time before that even with a negative mindset, I can still accomplish great things. And so that's why I think it's so important to have these individuals in your life, to be that constant reminder of what is possible. Because you're right, we don't actually know what our limitations are. The only limitation, we see these limitations, but it's because people have put them there, or they tell you that these things can't be accomplished. He was told that he would never walk again. The person didn't do it out of spite, but medically, based on what they've seen prior, he's told he's never going to walk. Now, he has two choices. He either listens to that person and agrees with it and gives up, or he proves the odds wrong. Now, from the day he was told that, there will be a day where I will film him walking, and he will walk because he's committed to it. It might take him years, but we both know that he's going to get there.
Yeah, it's really weird. That's a weird one to, because many people ask me that, like, I always say about the power acceptance, like, and on that day when they told me you're never going to walk, like, I accepted it there and then. I thought, okay, this is fine, I'm in a wheelchair. But in the same breath, I thought, I can beat it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I never know how to explain that, because you've got two different approaches to it. One, I'm like, okay, but two, I'm gonna beat it. But when you're talking about all that, going through it and all, like, certain little sayings stay out to me. I can remember before we'd done the Berlin Marathon, friend of mine, Paul, who runs the ultra marathon, sent me a message, and he just put, only those willing to go too far know how far one can go. And I thought, actually, that is right. You just push and push and push and keep doing it till you do. And like the through the dark thing was another saying what stood out to me early on. They sent me a t-shirt and it just said on the back, endeavor through adversity. And I wore that through every physio session, because I just kept thinking, like, yeah, just keep going.
I'm going there next week. I'm going to tell them that you.
Yeah,
you
they know. Yeah, I mean, they're good lads. But they sent me a postcard and just said, look, we admire the mindset. We're from a similar background in terms of like not similar background, but they appreciate the mindset through what they've done, SES and stuff like that. And that T-shirt, yeah, just endeavour through adversity. And I just used to say it.
It's interesting though, because when you said, so you took on the I suppose expertise of this person who was telling you, or his just opinion really, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you were never going to walk again.
Yeah.
But there was still part of you that was like, well, no, I'm going to prove that wrong.
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot in life. We have these conflicting things that we have to battle with.
I think we're all driven by different things. Like he's saying, like negative thoughts and kind of that drives him. I'm driven by praise really. So I like to do things people thought I couldn't, because that then you get the praise, like, wow, you know, you've done that today, and that's what motivates me. That, cool, look at him, look at this, you know, and I suppose just learning what is that drive. Like, I like a challenge, you know, so them saying you're never going to walk was like the greatest challenge ever for me. I was like, right, okay. And then, you know, there could have been a point that I had no hope of doing it, but actually then when you start seeing your toes wiggle, and then your foot wiggles, and you're like, okay, right, let's see what we can do with this. And then you just have all these goals. Like, my first goal was to stand, and then, you know, then once you can stand, you're like, okay, I want to learn to jump. Like, you know, can't jump, but
someday you will.
yeah, it's all right. It's just having something to drive towards. Yeah.
You got to evaluate, like, what would mean more to you. And some might say money, right? But like, if I said to Tano, right now, what would mean or have a greater impact in your life? Looking at your bank balance and seeing 10 million, or getting a message saying your attitude to your disability has inspired me to walk again.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the start, money's never meant anything to me. I'm not driven by money. And I generally wouldn't change the accident, though, because it has inspired so many people to do so many things. And honestly, I can't pull in. There is negatives to come from it, but so much positivity has come from it. Even our friendship, you know, and like millions of things have come from it. So I wouldn't change it. But, you know, like, no amount of money can put a value on health as well. You know, that ability to just, everybody gets up and walk, and you take it for granted. But, you know, people could abuse that as well, you know, but you just can't put a value on health, you know. So yeah.
What's your relationship like with your health now? Has it changed? Because I imagine you probably did take it for granted that you could walk, as we probably all do.
Yeah, it's just, it's nothing, it's something you don't think about, you know. You don't get up and think you're gonna one day not be able to walk, you know. And really, I'd seen people in wheelchairs and stuff, but you kind of just, I suppose you don't think about it because you don't want it to happen. Do you know what I mean? So I appreciate my health more, and I certainly, because I feel at some stage my health will deteriorate again. You know, I just think it's human nature. You know, as I get older, my body's going to slow down. You know, what I can do now, and it takes a lot of effort. You know, like for what I'm doing in physio, and it is a graft. And I know at some stage that's going to go backwards. So I certainly appreciate these golden years, if that makes sense. And sometimes it makes me probably overthink things. You know, like I kind of put a bit of time limit. Oh, I need to do this now, that. But yeah, I definitely appreciate my health more. Yeah.
It's funny because even as I'm hearing you say that, I'm so conditioned, and I think a lot of us are, but I'm so conditioned to think like it's linear growth. So I'm like, well, if you're getting better, Tanner, you're going to get better. And but it's not, is it? We have these down days and take backwards steps.
Certainly with this injury, that is not a natural progression. I mean, that is such a roller coaster of like, I can be doing so well for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've gone back like 4 months, and you think, why? Because I had that. I thought, cool, it's just going to improve, but it doesn't, you know. And it's a complex injury. You know, anyone out there with a spinal cord injury will tell you, like, it's just that little thing what runs down the center of your body. Your spinal cord controls everything, and one little nick in that can alter so much.
What do you do when it goes backwards?
So what do I do?
Eats donuts.
Eats donuts. Yeah, I do like donut.
And ice cream.
Yeah, and ice cream. Yeah, I've actually been really good on my diet lately.
I'll speak to him, but I can always tell when he's a bit neg about something, because typically ice cream or donuts come into the or pick and mix come into the equation.
Yeah, I think it's very good to reflect on where you've come from, you know, because you can actually sit back and I think, okay, things ain't going like they was, but I'm still a million times better than I was a year ago and what they told me I'm going to do. So I like to reflect on things, but I'm not an overthinker. Like, I've spoke to you many times about this. Like, if I have a negative thought, I'm so good at just switching it off, and like I'm that kind of it is what it is kind of guy, and that is me. Like, everything happens for a reason, and that mindset just gets me through everything. So I might have a day down near the river, you know, if I'm in a really like funk where I think, oh, why me now? Like, why this? And I said going through a breakup was a time of reflection for me. It was really hard. And I kind of paralysed skipped over it, wasn't bothered. 2 years later, going for a breakup, then that was like, wow, actually I am paralysed. That kind of reflects, so I processed that all sort of 2 years later. But if I'm in a funk, I'll go sit by the water and I'll just have a day to myself, have a little think, don't overthink too much, but and then the next day I'm like, right, today's a new day, and go on. I don't allow myself to think for too long. If it affects a day, that's the most I let it affect. Tomorrow's a new day. Let's go.
I think time for me is the greatest gift, but it's also the biggest curse. Because I think we all live our lives thinking we've got time. I'll do it tomorrow. If I earn enough money, I so many times I have friends who have got jobs where they earn so much money, but they are miserable and they revert to bad habits to mask over it, right? But their attitude is, by the time I'm 40, I'll be able to retire. But what happens if something life-changing happens tomorrow? Your biggest regret is that you didn't make the most of what you had physically or mentally. And so again, that's one of the greatest gifts I have with Tano, is that I know that your life can literally change with a click of a finger. So whenever I do challenges and people go, are you not worried about the injuries that you'll sustain? Why worry about that? The reality is that could happen, but at the same time, my life could change tomorrow forever. So am I going to regret having done a challenge and sustained an injury, or am I going to regret laying on that hospital bed knowing that I didn't make the most of myself mentally and physically? So for me, it's trying to make the most of the time that you have, so that God forbid it ever happens, you can lay there and know that you made the most of it. And not one of those things involves monetary value or materialism. Now, live in the moment. Don't fuck around. A friend of mine, one of the proudest moments I have actually of a friend of mine at the minute, he bought himself an Aston Martin. It was his dream car. And then like 2 months later, I called him up and said, how you doing? Oh, I've sold the car. I said, what do you mean you sold the car? It's your dream car. You've been talking about this for years. Well, things have changed. And I said, well, what's changed? He said, I just didn't enjoy it after a while. And I said, well, what are you going to do now? He said, I bought a camper van. And I was like, this guy is the last person you'd expect to buy a camper van. I said, what have you done that for? He said, well, I'm in a relationship now with a woman who's changed my mindset on things. And every single weekend on his stories, I see him traveling to a different coastal location and the fulfillment that brings him. He now is starting to accept the person who he is and what he wants to be and where he wants to go. Whereas before, I think it was almost a reflection of what people, or he wanted to be what he thought people wanted him to be and what made him happy. And this is what I'm talking about when you're on that journey, and I can see that, and I'm so proud of him. The funny thing is, I'm sharing this with you on this podcast. I even haven't said this to him yet, but if I say it, I want to say it to his face, because I really want him to feel the pride rather than just hearing it on the phone.
The irony of his personal development journey starting now with physical journeys to the coast is, I love that. As a quote as well, I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I'm who I think you think I am. He's saying he's trying to almost be what he feels other people think he should be. Yeah. And so many of us are lost in that.
That's that, like I said, living a life true to yourself. I think there's a book I've got it in there actually, I've not read it, but it's a book by Bonnie Weir. It's called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Yes, mate.
And
I've not read it either, but I know the top 5 things.
And I think number 1 is living a life true to yourself, is it?
I can't remember what number 1 is.
No.
There's... So trying to remember the 5 pieces together.
I think there's more, like spending more time with family. That we should have done that. I'm pretty sure it's living a life true to the self. Then I don't know what the other 3 are, but
we'll Google these.
But just to tell the viewers, to tell the viewers, I think she was a palliative nurse, wasn't she? Yeah. She's done it for like 25 years, and she cared for people within the last 12 weeks of their life, and she started asking them similar questions, didn't she? And she see a pattern of what people were regretting.
The ones I remembered a lot were not taking out things on your family. It was spending time with your family, but the detail was like not to take your negative out on, because we do it on our closest people, don't we?
We do,
Not losing touch with friends, which hit me because I always was like, I'm going to take over the world, I'm doing this, and it meant that along the way I lost touch with some of my, because they did different jobs to me, they had families who were in manual labour and all that sort of stuff, and it just didn't resonate with me, and we just lost touch over the years. I also did a lot of drugs at the weekend, which I wasn't really into. But yeah, I think that's such a good shout. I think, let's just see how long we've been going. Okay, last one, or last topic, transition.
Yeah.
In honour of the name of the podcast, Take Flight, it's about taking that leap of faith, which you guys have done time and time again with different things. Josh, I'd love to hear your version of what I imagine is a huge leap of faith on going onto a public-facing TV show.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear that bit. But what I'm more interested in actually is the transition out of that and how you've then gone into the ultra endurance to become the athlete that you are today. Because I think they're both huge, huge steps. And I'd just be interested to hear your version of that.
Yeah, I mean, it surprised most people when I joined that show.
How did it come about?
Truth be told, actually, I can't tell the truth because it's a reality show, right? We can't defy the reality. I was going to say I lived in Norfolk. Can't say that, though. I was from Chelsea.
Did you live in Norfolk, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I was living in Norfolk, and
Made
I was
in Norfolk?
Yeah, literally. I was made in Norfolk, and
You think?
I just come back from the building site because when I finished my rugby career, my poor rugby career, I was back home.
Where were you playing?
I played in London for a couple of years, very poorly, may I add, and then I moved over to Northern Ireland and had 2 incredible years there. And it just got to the point where, like most journeys, it just came to a natural end. So I'd started a property business in Norfolk and kind of was setting up shop there. And then I got a message just saying, a couple of friends were on this TV show. I wasn't interested, in all honesty. But my dad, who has come from absolutely nothing, really wanted me to go for it. He's like, listen, opportunities like this in life don't come often. Like, just don't miss this one. Just go and see. The rest is history. Obviously joined it. Would I say you get much fulfillment from that? I would say the existence of it can be incredibly empty if you don't have substance or surround yourself with substance, because it's hugely demanding of you and your person, I would say. It's quite taxing. So what you have to do is you have to set yourself goals. And I would say one of the assets I had was the mistakes I'd made in the past. I went into this with a fresh perspective of myself and what I wanted to achieve. And so rather than getting caught up in the moment and not making the most of that platform, I went into it with an ambition and goals in my mind of what I wanted to accomplish. And so although there were many negatives of that experience, and it did cost me a lot at times, there were so many positives to be taken from it. So, there was a real balance there. And for me, what's really important with anything that you do in life is to not get caught up in that moment. Because I think sometimes people look at it when they're kind of like the highest of successes or fames, and they think it's going to last forever. And like anything, it doesn't. It changes, and it can literally change with the click of a finger. And so for me, if I ever got to a point where my time had come to an end, or they no longer wanted me, or I decided to move on, then the transition would be easy. And fortunately for me, because I'd laid that foundation, I kind of went into things. I never thought I'd go into ultra sports. That wasn't really the ambition. That kind of is just something that's happened over time. But I comfortably was active and actually managed to break barriers and accomplish things that typically people within reality would not normally do. That's not because I would say I'm exceptional. I think it's just because of where I'd positioned myself and the ambitions I had equated to the acknowledgement of maybe a particular brand, for instance, or a person wanting to work with me, which I still find incredibly humbling. So actual fact, my dad was right for me to take that opportunity, because would I have accomplished any of these things? Would I be the person I am today? The answer is no, nor would I have had my 4-year-old little girl. I probably would be a guy who finished rugby, still building houses, probably with a dog, in a relationship. Does that mean I'd be unhappy? No, but knowing the person I am and the free spirit I am, I'm very grateful for the journey that I've had. How long this journey is going to continue for? I've got no idea. I kind of take it day by day, and I seem to reinvent myself, every other day. But it's one that I love. And I think although I kind of judge myself and go, I can't do a spreadsheet, and I'm not in the office, and I'm not a big time CEO, and I seem pretty clueless, whatever I am seems to have enabled me to continue with this life of freedom. And that, I think, is one of the things that I'm most grateful for.
Amazing, mate.
You are you, and that is your power.
When what stood out to me was that by being pushed into it, whether it was from your dad or your own decision or whatever that was, you said that you went into it because it was a new chapter, a new opportunity. You reframed your mindset, and that, I think that's what new opportunities allow us to do. Think again about who we are or who we want to be, and change that then each time we do it. And you made 2 massive jumps there.
Yeah, and I think I always say this to people: it's better in life to do something and regret it than regret
not doing
having never done it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so true. Go and do it. Take the risk. A guy, we've just set up a company, the Run Buddy, me, my running coach, Ben Parker, and Dom, 3 business partners. And I had to phone a guy Walter, who's just started. He's given up his job, which he was being paid very well for. He's got a newborn baby. It's a big leap of faith. But I was like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're still the same qualified individual. Worst case scenario, you take this risk, it doesn't pay off, and you can go back to that job. But if you stay in that job, you're still going to feel the same way that you did. Mm-hmm. And he was like 100%. And, hearing him take that leap of faith into this project is such an amazing thing. And one I do believe will pay off. I just hope with the environment and the platform that we're trying to create, more people can take that confidence and inspiration to do the same. Because what an awful feeling it must be to get to the end of your life having regretted never actually going for the dreams that you had or accomplishing the things that you wanted.
Before we come to you, Tano, so just general feeling towards doing this show, what are you happy? Was it a positive experience? Were you happy with doing it?
I used to begrudge the show a lot because of the things that happened to me. And actually the show is like life. The show's not to blame. It's the people almost, like they are there just to do a job. And when you sign up for that job, it comes with it, right? And it's taken me years to understand and to accept that. And, to not hold those grudges, and, it is what you make of it. Sometimes you have control over things, sometimes you don't. And when you don't, you just have to learn how to respond to it. And that's taken me a long time to even be able to say that. Because sometimes there are unfair portrayals maybe of you, or slightly distorted portrayals that you have no power or control over. In all honesty, not just with this show, but with anything you do, you could literally film a scene and the scene be completely different. I've seen guys who are the funniest individuals you've ever met, but be portrayed on set and in scenes like the dullest person, purely down to the editor's genius, But like I said, as long as your life is filled full of substance and you have those goals and you're being active, it doesn't really matter what comes your way or how negative it may be, because you have that to fall back on. I think when you make that your all, that's when it's the negative.
That's so good. I don't know how you were before, but you speak so well, mate. I know, Tano, we've said this before, like you're very articulate, and I wonder whether the show, because it gave you loads, as you said, including your daughter, but I wonder if it gave you that as well. Like you speak really well, and do you think that helped?
Yeah, I mean, do you know what I'm grateful for? It's exposed me to a huge platform now, and without it, of course you can grow it. You see individuals now, this is the exciting thing about the industry, that there are individuals from any different walks of life who are now creating opportunities for themselves and have these platforms. For me, do I have the capability to maybe have built that platform organically away from the show? Probably not, in all honesty. Not because I don't have the ability. I think it's more just how often I question myself. So for that, I'm really grateful that it's maybe propelled my position of where I'm at, and ultimately for me, I've got people, all different walks of life, different demographics, age ranges, that are invested in my journey, and one thing I'm grateful for is, I think through my adversity, my biggest goal in life before my time comes to an end is to redefine a person's perception of how they see themselves and how they see others, and as someone who has struggled mentally for many, many years prior, and as I've said, still at times with my anxieties now, I think the key messaging behind a lot of these challenges is that I do it, and I do it with struggles. You know, I'm not the perfect person. I'm not this concrete athlete that is impenetrable. I'm incredibly vulnerable, you know, and I do struggle, but I can still accomplish these things. And I'm hoping that with this platform that the show has given me, I can deliver that message to more people. Because for me, whenever I hear somebody's taken their life, that's a life I feel like I could have saved, in all honesty. It's not a massive weight on my shoulders where I'm beating myself up. But at the same time, the more I can get this message out there, hopefully the more impact I can have, so that when a person gets to that point in their life where they question themselves, I would like to think through what I've accomplished can hopefully make them question the decision that they wish to make, or inspire them to push through. So for every negative, in all honesty, mate, there are a huge amount of positives, you know, no matter how negative it may be.
Yeah. I think that everything happens for a reason. Like, generally, if he hadn't have gone on the show, you know, he wouldn't have that following. They wouldn't have gifted me with the following I got. And, you know, I hate to think how many people I've spoke to and lovely messages I've had, you know, inspiring kids to get out of the room in a wheelchair and go to a wheelchair race or anything, or just pull people through horrible times. You know, if he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have that. So it's just that ripple effect, and everything kind of does happen for a reason. Like I always say, like my accident was always going to happen, you know, and everything I'd done up to life was setting me up for that. You know, he was always going to go on something like that reality TV show. Everything he done before was setting him up for that, and it's all just a continuing story. You know, we sat here today doing this podcast. It's all relative, you know, and something good comes from something bad, and that is just, it's weird how the world works.
No, you're so good at that perspective, mate, as well. I love it. I'm knackered. How are you two feeling?
I'm right. I'm grounded.
I'm pretty chilled, mate.
I'm grounded. I don't know. We made a conscious effort to all sit here with no socks on, so this is a new experience.
So, I think this is going to be. What are we, 150? Yeah, this is going to be the longest podcast I've ever done.
Is it?
So I might do it in 2 episodes. But we do the same 3 questions at the end of every episode. Tanner, you've obviously done these before, but we'll do them again. Quick fire to give people a tangible thing to take away.
I'll fucking struggle with that. When we say quick fire, are we talking 10 minutes per question?
Sub hour.
Or are we dropping this down to 10 seconds?
Yeah, God. You do not have...
Should we ask Tanner first? He'll set the example.
You have to understand, I live alone, mate. This is my opportunity. This is my opportunity to get some companionship and actually speak.
Honestly, even a phone call. I know when he rings me, like occasionally, like I think I can't answer that now because I haven't got 45 minutes, and I'm like, well, I better just get my job done. Then I'll pull over and I'll call him back. Yeah.
And I've got to spare 3 hours.
Oh.
So the first of these 3 is there anything specific you've discovered or come across recently that you're particularly excited about?
Anything I've recently discovered?
Something that fills you with excitement. Anything you've come across, discovered recently that you're particularly excited about?
It's just a weird, awkward moment where your mind goes blank. What have I discovered recently?
Go on.
That's really both like,
come on, man, you're not excited.
Yeah, no, I don't know, really.
God, it's really hard when you get asked a question like that. Something in your life that you're excited about.
That's really, I don't know why I've gone blank. What?
I think, do you know what? I think not about, I think just more about the general public. I think as much as social media can be a negative, I think what really excites me and inspires me is we've never lived in a time better than now in terms of the opportunities that the world offers to any individual. And it doesn't matter who you are or what your background is. Like, I just think, you know, and it's the transitions. It's like you don't have to be capped to one singular job role. You could have 5 or 6 now because of social media and be successful in all of them. And that for me, I think is really exciting. And especially when you're seeing individuals with like disabilities before, where typically they might be insecure in class, but TikTok or Instagram has really got behind them. I know there's obviously the negatives of trolling, but like you're seeing these platforms and the acceptance that they're having, and it gives them a platform to speak openly and maybe change a person's perception of that condition. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Love that.
I think generally at the minute, like I'm in a really happy space. Like, and I think it's when you said like, what is anything exciting? I thought, my life just seems to be going really well at the moment. And I am just in a happy place, and nothing really excites me because I feel like I'm really in an excited state anyway. I mean, I've recently started with a new physio, which has inspired me to do more. So I'm excited we can still progress.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually over the last few days, I've been really happy with what we've kind of done. I had a very year of just doing nothing, I embraced the isolation and just thought I'm not doing anything, and that was lovely, but I've kind of wanted that spark back, so I'm excited to see what the future holds. But yeah, I'm just in a really good space at the minute.
Amazing. One habit or routine that you would encourage all listeners to undertake daily?
Self-love. Just remind yourself each day of one thing that you love about yourself, because I think we forget to do that. I think we focus so much on the negatives of what we're getting wrong in life, and actually we don't focus on the things that we did. Even if it takes you 10 hours that day to accomplish it, if you do accomplish that one singular thing, praise yourself.
Amazing.
Do you know what I found recently really affects me in a positive way? Is getting up early. Like,
Really?
I think an earlier start, like if I make myself get up at 6 and then if I add exercise into that as well, then that boosts my whole day. Like I think you can, if too much sleep's not good. Like, so I just think getting up early is a very positive thing you can do.
That's interesting. I haven't woke by alarm for a long time, and I got into a habit of just getting up when I wake up.
Yeah.
And being tired because of my daughter, and like just like, I'm gonna, that's
I
a good
just
one.
seem to get from like 6 till 10, 11. Like if I do that, I get so much done. Like I'm more, I mean, I'm guessing everybody's individual, but I find there's a superpower in getting up early.
Love that. Nice. So this is a slightly different one for both of you in this case. Take yourself back to a particularly challenging moment in your life. Pick whichever one you want. Imagine there's two versions of yourself, right? So there's two Tanos, two JPs in that moment. What's the key differentiator between the one who's gone on to achieve all the incredible things that you've done today and is sitting in front of me now, and the one who wouldn't have done any of those things? What's the key difference?
Mine's easy. The most challenging time of my life was obviously being strapped to a hospital bed, paralysed, and the differentiating thing. I can't even say that then. The to me, being me, sat here positive, happy, doing well at life, to somebody who isn't, is acceptance.
Acceptance.
Yeah, acceptance, 100%. Like, if I hadn't accepted that was me, and I'm still thinking about where I was, I'm still going to be down in the dumps, and that don't just affect me, that affects everyone around me. So I'm lucky, like I accepted that there and then. Obviously I said 2 years on, when I went through a breakup, I kind of had to process that over a course of 6 months of thinking, wow, I am paralysed, but still done it. But if I hadn't have accepted it there and then, I'm still in a very negative mindset, wasting life really. So yeah, I mean, that is a different thing there of just accepting it and thinking, this is it. Let's smash it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So good.
I would say
I think yours is probably when you met me.
I would say responding to finding out I was going to be a dad could have gone two ways, because I think the timing of when it happened, I wasn't actually with her mother at the time, and the situation at the time wasn't right. Not that it would ever been a negative, I think, with my child, but I think it opened my eyes to how you can respond to something like that. I think in life you realise that the circumstances are never what you wish them to be, but it's amazing how quickly we can actually adapt to it. I know you said one, but I'd say also probably the 24-hour patio challenge. I think having gone into that with such a negative mindset and having never done it before, to have actually accomplished it has now opened my eyes to everything and anything.
Having done, it was 4 before you did the double, right? Or 5 before you did the double?
6 and 5.
Yeah. So then the 5th day.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, 4. Yeah,
so
4
4
in a row.
marathons already,
Yeah.
and then that. Yeah.
See, and when you said about children, like mine was acceptance, but it's funny how me having children allowed me to accept it quicker. Because do you know what I mean? Like, so many things, like I said, it's just funny how life knits itself and things that, like, if I didn't have children, I probably wouldn't have accepted it as quick as I could because it was only me. But on that day, I knew if I'm sad, they're sad. So I accepted it because that benefited them. So it's just weird how the fibers of life kind of
purpose outside yourself again.
Exactly. It's just everything happens for a reason.
I think people focus so much with parenthood, like when they find out they're going to be a parent, you know, most of the time it's planned, and then quite a lot as well it's not, and people worry about how it may hinder or change their life. And I just wish more people could see, actually, you know, it's not always necessarily the case, but it depends on the person's mentality. But I would say since the day I found out I was going to be a daddy, I've probably achieved more in my life in the 4 years my little girl's been alive than in my entire life put together. You know, she has changed everything about me and what I can achieve. And for that, I'm just, you know, forever grateful. And it's not even anything she's necessarily said or done. It's just her being present just has that impact, you know?
I think they say, don't they, the two things our purpose of life is to survive and reproduce, you know, and that is kind of what we do. I mean, my kids are my world, you know, that definitely define me, and magic.
We're lucky to all have kids, aren't we?
Yeah, that is, yes, right, yeah.
Also, a special mention to, before we start this conversation, Josh and I had a competition of the crossbar challenge.
Oh, actually, you've got to do a spoonful of chili sauce.
You actually make me do spins on
you can't have
podcast,
a bet and lose,
on the podcast.
I will say that Mark was very confident with his first shot. Definitely going to hit it, boys. And that was Samsonite. That was just useless.
Yeah, but what about the second?
I mean, that's Samsonite. I
second
always
was
say
class.
that comes off Dumb and Dumber. Yeah.
Swanson.
Samsonite.
Yeah, but the second one was perfection. Is there such a thing?
It was bang centre, bang on the crossbar. Obviously, I missed 3 times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Boys, thank you so much. Anything you want to leave with? I mean, we've covered a lot.
No, do well. Take flight.
Nice. Thank you.
Bosh.
Well
Mate, thank you for having us, man.
Yeah, cheers.
Come
mate.
on, boys.
Yeah.
Group hug.
Yes.